Actually, I don't need my glasses. I can see this. Good evening, everyone. I'm Luis Herrera. I'm the city librarian here in San Francisco, and I'm really delighted to see a full house here. And I guess that's not surprising because we have a wonderful, wonderful program for you. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this evening's capstone program for One City, One Book, San Francisco Reads. And, you know, this is our 7th year of selecting one book for all San Franciscans to read and engage in conversations and dialogue. And this year's selection of Mary Roach's Packing for Mars has been a great choice, and I know you'll all agree with me. The book took us on an entertaining trip into the science of life in space and the marvels of achievements in sending humans into space. This year was a little bit different because we focused on promoting science and literacy by also partnering with the Bay Area Science Festival, which was a 10-day celebration of science and technology, which gave us the opportunity to sponsor a variety of space-themed programs throughout the fall. And we're really pleased that One City, One Book has again met with great success. For months, San Franciscans have been checking out books out of our libraries, and in fact, right now, we have more than 500 copies that are checked out. And purchasing copies also from our independent bookstores, which is great for small businesses. Another goal was to engage a very wide and broad audience, including students. And as part of One City, One Book, Mary has actually spoken to over 1,000 public high school students in assemblies and book groups, talking about her passion for research and writing and answering all sorts of questions. And I was teasing her about maybe sharing some of those questions with us because I'm sure that they're all over the map. And Mary, thank you so much for being so open and accessible to our students here in the Bay Area. Hundreds of adults and kids have also taken part in a variety of programs extending their knowledge of science and their love of reading. These programs have included events about outer space music, space crafts, and also a variety of book discussions in library branches around the city. Just last week, we had over 280 people here in the Koret to hear UC Berkeley astronomy professor Alex Filipenko talk about dark energy and the runaway universe. And I know it could have gone on for hours with a variety of questions that were asked at this fascinating event. A number of book clubs, including the University of San Francisco Book Club and other groups at Books, Inc., have also chosen a book to read and discussed Packing for Mars this fall. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors and partners, certainly the continued support from the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library, and I'd like to do a quick shout out to Donna Barrow, our Executive Director of the Friends of the Library. Thank you, Donna, for the great support that your association organization provides. Our media sponsors, the Examiner and the Bay Area, the Bay Guardian, UCSF, and the Bay Area Science Festival. And finally, our bookstore partners and program supporters. And those are listed in detail in this program guide that you may have seen. So I encourage you to thank them for their support. And of course, the selection committee that did a great job in selecting Packing for Mars. Now, we have a full house, so those of you that are seated could peek under your seat if you haven't already. And our friends at Smitten Ice Cream in Hayes Valley have created a special moon pie flavor for One City, One Book and are giving each of you a little treat. So it's under your seat. So enjoy that after the program or some other time during the week. So in addition to Packing for Mars, Mary is the author of the best-selling nonfiction books Stiff, Spook, and Bonk. She lives across the bay in Oakland. And in conversation with Mary will be Adam Savage. Adam, thank you for joining us, who many of you know from the Discovery Channel's MythBusters. Adam is also an industrial designer and special effects designer, fabricator, actor, and an educator. Before they take the stage, please sit back and enjoy Rockets of Yesterday. It's a short film created especially for this program by Megan Prelinger, co-founder and information designer of the Prelinger Library, an independent research library of 20th century American history and author of Another Science Fiction. After the conversation, Mary and Adam will take some questions from the audience, and then there will be also time for book sale and signing in the back of the auditorium. So enjoy the show, and thank you for joining us this evening. Thank Thank you.
Tape recorder's running, right? Tape recorder's running.
Roger, 0J, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour.
off. 1 off, 0. Main bus tires off. Okay?
Roger, Houston, reaching out to reading of the fan, coming up on iOS, go from. Should be right now, man. I have no conception of where we're pointed or which way we go. All the traffic thing. But a beautiful low pressure set off.
How do you possibly describe the first photograph that a human being has ever seen from the surface of another planet?
Oh, hey! There is orange soil. Well, don't move it till I see it. It's all over. Orange! Don't move it till I see it. I've stirred it up with my feet. Hey, it is! I can see it from here. It's orange. Fantastic, sports fans.
So we're coming down, straight down.
Nav is green for touchdown. ACS is green, 1.5 degrees per second max, 0.2 Gs. 8 feet per second. Touchdown, we have touchdown. Extra zone.
We have touchdown.
Neighborhood zone. Camera 1 zone. We're looking good.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
And this is exploration at its greatest.
All these are questions we don't know, but the answers are on the moon.
Thanks.
Well, I hope you haven't used up all your applause, because I introduced to you author, serial obsessive Mary Roach.
Thank you. Adam Savage!
There's a lot to go over here, Mary. I'm not sure we'll have time to answer all the questions that I've come up with in the last couple of weeks. I want to start with young Mary Roach. I want to know what sort of precocious child you might have been that might have had harbingers of the author that you've become.
Okay. Well, people sometimes ask if I was a strange child. And I used to say no, I was really quite normal. And then, like, over the years that I've been asked this, people have, keeps bringing it up, and things have sort of drifted back to my consciousness, like that I used to play with small plastic dinosaur replicas that my dad would bring from the Natural History Museum, and I played with them in the cat litter box because it seemed like a more realistic environment close to what the creatures would actually have had. So there's that. I really wasn't a science weenie kid.
Yeah.
I liked science fine. I didn't foresee myself ever, A, writing, B, doing science writing.
Well, then, so what about the young professional Mary Roach? You started writing, and you wrote for magazines.
I graduated in the midst of a recession. It was 1981, and I had a liberal arts degree, which, as you all know, gets you a lot of places really fast. So I graduated I'll find something. I don't have any skills, really, or anything I can do for anybody. But so I started out actually doing copy editing, proofreading. Not good for me. I'm the kind of person who, I'm not very detail-oriented. Because as a copy editor, you're supposed to go, this capitalization here of this term actually was done differently in the second chapter. We need to go back. And I'm the kind of person to be like, I don't care. Nobody's going to notice. Who cares? So clearly that wasn't a good career for me. And then I started writing. I got a job at the zoo, the San Francisco Zoo. I worked in a trailer next to Gorilla World, doing copywriting for the membership magazine and press releases and that kind of thing. And I was terrible at publicity and public relations. I'm the kind of person that, someone would call up from the media and say, I understand that I heard a rumor that there was a cheetah that was sucked dry by fleas. And of course, my job as the public relations person was to, control the damage and, cut that off. And I'd go, how many fleas do you think that would actually take? Like, how much could one hold times what's the number, how much blood in a cheetah? And I'd get off, like, sort of MythBusters kind of thing.
I noticed something I've read all your books, and I read them all again in the last month.
You poor man.
No, it was great fun, but I noticed something is that you're within this genre right now, and there's a lot of books in this genre, that Guns, Germs, and Steel, and Salt, and books that seem to be a genre about a single thing and how important it is to everything else. However, your books are different than the other books in that genre because you seem to be just as fascinated with the people actually researching the subject that you're researching as you are fascinated by the subject itself.
Oh, more so, I think, really. Yeah, I'm endlessly distracted as I do my books, and in fact, the distraction is sort of how the books happen, because it's the distraction that leads me to the good stuff, and I don't ever know. I write book proposals. I turn in something that bears absolutely no relation to the book I eventually produce, because I don't know what the path is going to be, and to me, it's just, wow, there's some guy in Taiwan, and he's doing this amazing kind of bizarre kind of surgery for erectile dysfunction. And then I get there, and he's this amazing guy. I show up, and he's got an acupuncture needle sticking out of his head, and he operates with wraparound glasses because the glare bothers him. But he's a really passionate guy, and he wants to help as many men as he can. I'm like, that's to me, I mean, erectile dysfunction is interesting, but the guy and how he came to it and what he does and how he does it is to me the story that grabs me. Yeah.
Now, can you describe for us, like, your average, you head out to these people like this scientist, and I don't imagine that he gets a lot of people coming to write about him.
No.
So what is it
That's
like?
That's my secret weapon.
What is it like to get so these people, you show up in these people's labs and they don't feel like they have a glamorous occupation or that other people are paying attention, and you pay attention. So what kind of response do you get from them?
No, and that's I think why this is all so much fun is that the people that I'm interviewing are not people who are trying to keep something. A lot of journalism is like, I'm not going to give you anything. I've got secrets, and I'm going to keep them, and you may be trying to get them from me. These are people whose wives are sick of hearing about what they do. Their friends don't want to hear about it. And then I show up, and I'm like, talk to me for 2 days. It's so cool what you do. How do you do it? Can you, like there's this guy, Chuck Gerba. He's a microbiologist, and this was an assignment had to do with food safety and, germs in the kitchen and bathroom, and he's at the University of Arizona, but we went to his house, and Chuck Gerba, first of all, his house is filthy. I ask his wife, Peg, how often do you clean the kitchen floor? She goes, when my feet start to stick to it. She's an entomologist, and the whole den is full of breeding fruit flies, and so, I mean, as a cleanliness guru, it was just this amazing scene, but his enthusiasm, he's like, God, how the way we sterilize the toilet seat before we take samples, we got to make sure it's sterile, so we put the rubbing alcohol in and you light it, and we can go do that. We'll shut off the lights, and like his kids, and we all go down to the bathroom, and he puts the alcohol in the toilet seat and lights it, and this blue flame goes up, and everybody's going, whoa. So, because, the microbiology in and of itself, it is interesting, but it doesn't grab you quite the way microbiology, as done by Chuck Gerba, would grab you. So, yeah, and I think Chuck had fun, hopefully.
Well, so in Bonk, I use the term serial obsessive to introduce you, but in Bonk you said you're a serial obsessive, but you don't think you go off the deep end. In these 4 books, and I'm assuming there's another one that you're writing now, have you ever gone off the deep end?
As in friends and family start to shun me. The deep end is a kind of I may go off the deep end. I may be just living off the deep end all the time, and I don't really entirely know it.
Well, so what was the genesis of let's start with Stiff. How did you propose Stiff, and then how did it change from your proposal and become what it was?
Well, Stiff was around the time Stiff, the contract for Stiff happened, I was writing for Salon.com, and I had a column which was kind of a random things about the human body that are sort of weird and interesting, a reported column, but kind of goofy. And there were 3 columns that had to do with cadaver research that I had just sort of stumbled onto. One was a human crash test dummy, not dead people actually, it was a couple of guys, Larry Patrick, this guy who would like get on the crash sled himself and slam into the wall up to about 30 miles per hour, at which point you need to bring in those guys who don't feel anything, the dead people. But Larry Patrick, I was like, wow, man, he's this very soft-spoken man in his 80s, and it was just, I was so fascinated by him. And the cadaver part, it was just sort of and oh yeah, when they start going faster, they use cadavers. I didn't really foresee that the germ of the next 5 years of my life was right there in those dead bodies. And I had another, it was a Thanksgiving Day column on, and you can relate to this, how much the human stomach would hold before it bursts. I know you have looked into that with pigs.
It's a lot.
Yes, it's a lot. I know, yeah. So there was that column, and I was talking to an agent who said, you ought to think about a book. And I looked at which columns got the most hit rates, because on Salon, you have this instant feedback in the form of how many people read your piece. And of course, also they call you and say, only 5 people read your column. So you have this feedback that kind of shapes you. And I was like, well, that cadaver thing seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And he said, well, and I kind of thought he would say that as a book idea is terrible and disgusting and no one will buy this book, but he said, that sounds great, write a proposal. So that's what happened, and I still, even when writing it, thought it was really hard to envision the scenario where somebody will go into a bookstore and there'll be this whole table of amazing books and works of literature, and someone will go, book about cadavers, that's what I'm gonna read now. I mean, like,
that's precisely how I came across the book.
Really?
Absolutely. There's that bookstore on Upper Fillmore. Yeah, there's a bookstore on Upper Fillmore, and I was looking at their main table. I still remember, and I was like, oh, I have to read this right away.
You are the 1%.
So,
God love you.
Stiff was enormously popular. Did you get any negative responses for it?
I got, the thing with, when you write books, the lovely thing is that the people who like the book are the ones that go out of their way and write to you. The people who don't like it set it aside. Maybe they go and trash you on Amazon, which I don't look. I don't. So you get this skewed. You get a lot of wonderful feedback. So I got a note from Jack Kevorkian's assistant. At one point, I forget the guy's name. He said, and he starts out going, "I really love the book." One thing, though, I talk about in Stiff, this is an obscure point, it was this project Kevorkian had where he was transfusing cadaver blood into people as, a blood transfusion. And his point being, when someone is freshly dead, there's a certain amount of time where this blood is useful, and why are we wasting it? Anyway, and then he said, but he had this line, what I picked up on was, this is a novel thing, and people will be opposed to it just because it's new, so don't tell the patient or the family member. And I took a little, I was like, you might want to let them know. So he said we did let them. Anyway, he wrote this note saying, just taking issue with that, and he ended by saying, and I'm going to send your book to Jack Kevorkian at the Thumb Correctional Facility. And I kept waiting, bracing for some strange note from Jack, but it never arrived.
Which one of your books has garnered the most negative or perhaps the most passionate response?
I can tell you which has generated the most interesting response, and that is Bonk. Bonk, partly because of the TED Talk also, but after the book came out and the TED Talk, which was called 10 Things You Didn't Know About Orgasm, I began to get email, and just because people thought, because of the TED Talk, that I was a researcher, a sex researcher. So I would get email that would be like, "Dear Ms. Roach, I am a 49-year-old Greek man, and when I ride a bicycle, I have an orgasm. And because I know this is going to happen, I will sometimes ride around in circles rather than reach my destination, thereby becoming late. And I don't know if the anxiety of being late is it was this long..."
Worst personal ad ever.
Yeah. Just at the end, and just thought you might be interested. So I got a lot of that kind of, women saying, for me, just putting on lip gloss will do it. Yeah. Just really, but kind of amazing. I turn on my computer in the morning and just like, what am I going to get today? So that was really but Stiff, I think overall, the responses to Stiff I did not expect. I got a fair amount of mail from people who said this book helped me to cope with death. I lost my mother, or something, it would be a family member had died, but something kind of demystified things in a way that was helpful for people. I did not see that coming. I worried that people would find it flippant or upsetting if they had just lost a family member, and so that has been kind of an ongoing, fabulously gratifying thing.
I imagine. Your tone is actually really an interesting aspect of the books. I mean, clearly in the way you name them, you have a dark sense of humor.
I wanted to call the space book Floaters. My publisher did not go for that, no.
Oh, that's a great title.
I thought so.
But you're almost in conversation with the reader. You write your experience all the time, and I wonder if you think about yourself within the pantheon of Tom Wolfe and Hunter Thompson and what they were calling new journalism back in the 60s. But really, I haven't read much else that is so personal. I just keep going back to Stiff, where you see the 50 heads in the lab, and you meet the person that cut all those heads, and all you can think is, she cuts heads, she cuts heads.
I'm just trying to entertain the reader. You know what it is? I don't see myself in that pantheon, not just because they're kind of larger than life, and I don't know, smaller than life or something. I don't know, the same size as life, maybe. So I don't know. I think that the reason I do that is that when I'm writing, have this constant sense of the reader being about to put the book down and go, this is getting a little boring. So I'm kind of like dancing as fast as I can. If a paragraph doesn't have something fresh, surprising, or funny, I'm afraid they're going to go, I'll read that later. So I think it's my massive insecurity that causes me to have a voice that I think is going to kind of I want to keep people engaged with the whole flow of things, and I'm afraid that just facts they'll put the book down.
Yes. Well, Vonnegut writes that he was told mid-career that every writer writes to someone, and when he examined it, he realized he wrote all his books to his sister, that she was his audience. Do you have someone specific in mind when you think of the reader?
It's like in Being John Malkovich, when the whole room is full of John Malkovich.
Yeah.
I think it's like I'm picturing just a bunch of people who are kind of like me. Because I can't imagine who else would read my books.
Except that it turns out there's a lot more people like you than you thought.
I guess there are, and I think that's a good thing for the world somehow. I don't know. Or maybe not. Maybe it's a horrible thing.
Now, you've described your husband, Ed, over here as a very willing lab rat in your journey through these books.
Occasionally not so willing.
Occasionally not so. Do you want to talk about things he was willing to do and things that he was not willing to do?
Yeah. Ed, okay, for Bonk, this is... I just have to preface this by saying that when I started doing the book Bonk, which is about sex labs and physiological sex research, Ed goes, sex research, sign me up. Okay, and I didn't tape record that, but that stayed in my head. So when it came time, there was this study. There's not a lot of really juicy stuff going on in sex labs, and I found this guy in London who was doing this. It had basically involved a 4-dimensional ultrasound movie, and he had done previously puckering lips. He had done an erecting penis, which was his own. But now he wanted to do genitals and sexual congress. Okay, and he was good. He announced in The Lancet would be his new project, and so I wrote an email and I said I'd like to be there for this historical undertaking, and would that be okay? And he wrote back, well, yes, but we're having difficulty finding volunteers. So if your organization can provide a brave couple for study, I would be willing to set it up. So my organization calls its husband. And I believe Ed can corroborate this, that the way I phrased it was, you know how you said you haven't been to London in 10, 20 years, and would you like to go? And we can go to West End, we can see some plays. There's Jeremy Irons is in a play right now. We'll go to Stonehenge, we have to have sex in front of a guy in a lab coat. And he's just such an incredibly good guy that he went along with it. I think also Ed has an ability to maintain a state of massive denial right up until, he was fine running around London. We were having a great time. It was like right up until the point where Dr. Deng walks down the hallway toward us, and Ed goes, "Oh God, here he comes." So anyway, yeah.
Well, if that's a line he's willing to cross, where's the line that he drew?
He has drawn a line, and I'm not even gonna. It has to do with the next book, and it's we won't even. See, but I have to say, there's one line ever that he drew. The only time Ed got annoyed with me over things that I had him doing in my work, there was a Salon column where I said that NASCAR, that he was looking at the television and NASCAR was on, and Ed's like, "I don't watch NASCAR. Why would you say that I watch NASCAR?" I think it was just, happened to be on. Anyway, so that was the only time I really crossed the line. Implying
Sex
that
in the lab is okay, NASCAR, not so much. Okay. Throughout the books, talk about one of your toughest interviews. I mean, I would also imagine that these people who lead these, what they think are unglamorous lives, might also be slightly difficult interviews.
Well, I had not usually. Sometimes, though, I don't know what I'm getting into. Once I did a story on the guy who invented, radial keratotomy. It's before LASIK. They would cut little lines in the surface of your cornea, and it would heal and fix your nearsightedness. Okay, and I went to interview in Russia the guy who had invented this, Fyodorov. It was his last name, and I didn't realize this. He's a kind of a huge ego. A man who he was actually running for president then, and I'm trying to talk to him about eyeballs, and it's this disconcerting thing. He has this huge desk, and he's sitting at the desk, and I'm talking here, but behind him, this enormous wall of video monitors of eyeballs being operated on, blown up, just like 24 blow-ups of eyeballs, because he has a conveyor belt operating room where there's, patients come through 65 per hour, each surgeon doing one thing. Anyway, so they're all there, and it was very distracting. And then I would say things like, "Professor Fyodorov, so what is your vision?" And meaning, are you nearsighted? And he goes, my vision for this country. And he goes on. That was a tough interview just because I couldn't get him to focus. Unintended.
I came across something in your biography. Have you really been to Antarctica 3 times?
Yeah. There's this, I don't know if it still exists, but the National Science Foundation had a press program where you could, if you were writing for a newspaper or a magazine, and you could prove that they were going to run the story that you would write, they would schlep you around and put you on a Twin Otter and take you out to the ice fields and take you to the pole and whatever you wanted to do. And it was just it was like my taxpayer dollars at work. So I went down there 3 times for that program. Yeah.
And you wrote about it.
And I wrote about it. Discover magazine. Who else?
Is there a book in the future
Reader's
called
Digest.
Cold?
Cold. There is already a fabulous book, Cold.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you should. It's really good. So I can't do that one.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, that was why I was there. Very cool. I thought about I wanted to do a book about Antarctica, but Sarah Wheeler has done a really good one, and it seems like unless you're crossing it, at the same time the soles of your feet are falling off, and you're dying of liver poisoning from vitamin A from polar bear livers, and I mean that kind of thing. That kind of Antarctic book works, but not so much. I couldn't figure a way to make it. But no, wait a minute, not polar bear.
Not polar bears?
No polar bears.
Seals?
No polar bears down there. They'd have to be the Arctic.
So,
It's true.
You said people found Stiff surprisingly comforting in terms of helping them deal with death. Have you found surprising results as your other books have spent time out in the world? Surprising interpretations? Surprising
interpretations of my books. Well, Bonk, people expected that Bonk would have changed, the number one question was, how did Bonk change your life? And everybody wants me to talk about my sex life. So that would be sort of and I would just, the only thing that I could really come up with was that when you're reading the Masters and Johnson's book, Human Sexual Response, which is this incredibly encyclopedic, detailed, everything that happens to men and women when they're sexually responding. If you are in the process of reading that book, that profoundly affects your sex life because you're going like, is this the point where the earlobes engorge? You know, I mean, so that was an effect of the book. But no, the effects of my books, not really any sort of earth-shaking.
All right. I'm wondering if there's, you write this thing and you set it out into the world and you're not sure people are going to be interested in reading it. I guess I'm wondering, is there a way in which they give you feedback? Like you said to me the other day that people either loved or hated Spook.
Yes. Well, Spook was a book that Spook is about people trying to prove using scientific method or laboratory techniques, prove that there is a soul or an afterlife, which is a kind of an interesting way to think about it, an interesting thing to do with science, to try to take it and apply it to something in the realm of religion. So that was, and I thought, I just was fascinated by those endeavors and the people that undertook them. But people wanted it to be a quest where I would review all of this work and then give them the answer to the ultimate question that no one has been able to answer over the millennia, which is there life after death? And then people are like, but you didn't answer the question. I'm like, well, what did you think? Well, with my BA in psychology, I will figure this out once and for all.
Well, actually,
so that was odd.
I was very impressed with the way you covered stuff in Spook because it was incredibly scientific. I mean, clearly you're a skeptic. Clearly you have a scientist's eye towards things. But when you were examining, I can't remember the name of the guy who weighed the human soul.
Duncan McDougall, the early guy, or Jerry Nahum, the current?
No, the early guy.
The early guy, yeah.
And you were positing ways in which his data might have been falsified, or not falsified, but the way in which he might have been wrong. And you were like, well, he could have been a nutter.
Yeah, it could have been the scale.
Could have been the scale. And you went so far as to research the scale company. I did. That's incredibly scientific.
The Springfield Scale Company, I found them, and I called them up, and they sent me, it was great, they said, here's the catalog from that year, and so I could find that it was a industrial silk weighing scale, so I was able to find out that its accuracy is like about within a third of a pound. So really, if you're trying to weigh the soul, this isn't the best instrument.
We have this problem on the show all the time. Weighing large things in very tiny increments.
Yeah.
Since Stiff, 4 books in and 1 on the way, has it gotten easier to write?
No, I'm getting slower and more flummoxed. No, I thought you would think it'd just be like, I know the process now. I know I've come to accept the fact that there will be 3 months of random flailing in the beginning where I try to figure out what the hell the book is about. And I've accepted that. I kind of accepted the randomness of the process by which I complete these books. And I am maybe a little less inclined to go through that inevitable phase of which I did with Packing for Mars, where I go, that's it. I quit. I can't stand it. Nothing's working. It's over. I'm done. And Ed knows that this happens every time, and he'll say, yeah, but you know what? In 2 days, everything's going to be fine, and you'll be right back on track, and you go through this every single book. So you'd think that all of that, I would have worked it all out, and now it would be a seamless process. But do you find like?
No, I find creatively the better you get at something, or the more you do something, the cruel joke is that it gets harder.
You start to see everything that you did wrong. I mean, like I look back at Stiff and I find fault with it that I didn't see at the time. Like I think I should have researched that more. I shouldn't have relied. That was just a book. It's a secondary source. I shouldn't have relied on that, or I should have fact checked that, or I should. To me, I just become more aware of the ways that things can go.
Well, you demand more. You demand. I mean, that's the other thing. Is you get better at something, you demand more from yourself. You demand more from the thing that you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And you also think, well, I should be doing something different because I've done the same thing, and I should be branching out. But this is the only thing I do well. So if I do that, then I'll really fail. And so no, it doesn't get easier. Strangely.
Have you ever spent large amounts of time and resources going to get an interview that was totally pointless and didn't make it into one of the books?
Constantly.
Oh, really? There's a lot of material on the cutting room floor?
No, it falls within the 3 to 4 months of random flailing. There will be trips that I take that will not find their way into the book, or there'll be a little chunk of it rather than a whole chapter. just because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where the book is going, what the arc of the chapters will be, and something comes up and I think, oh, that's great, I'm going to go report on that, and then I realize it doesn't really fit. It's not, So I spin my wheels a bunch.
So when you're out there on location, and I'm thinking back to Stiff, you're at the body farm.
Yes.
And you're describing you're actually a description of the body farm. It's a place where they study bodies decaying. So there's bodies half buried, not buried, sitting under trees in various stages of decay, and they're looking at the insects on them. And you point out, you say, you're watching maggots under the skin of a fresh body, and you say it ends up having the look of expensive Japanese rice paper. Now I'm wondering, are you making that note right there, or do you go back to the hotel room and rewind the day and make that note?
That one, and those in particular, those stunningly peculiar ones, that was something that struck me right then and there. And I think it may have been the way that the brain has a way, at the body farm or in the lab with the 25 heads in the roasting pans, your brain has a way of turning these things into something less distressing. Like at the room with the plastic surgery and the heads, I found my brain telling me, look at the people working on Halloween masks. You kind of have to make it something less threatening. And I think that I needed to see some kind of beauty in it. But anyway, that's what it looked like to me, because it was this, so that was something that occurred to me right then and there.
You said to me, we had a conversation a while back where you said that often when you head out to a location on the first day, you don't get much in the way of the interview, but
right.
You do on the second day. How come?
It's something I tell journalism students is stick around for more than a day. I mean, I'm really, the actual interview is the formal interview where you sit down with a tape recorder is a small chunk of time, maybe an hour, but for me it's absorbing what does this person do and seeing them at work. And only when you've been around for a while and they've kind of habituated to your presence, it's kind of like, when researchers in the field who are studying, this sounds really bad, I was going to say studying chimpanzees. Well, they spend a certain amount of time just being around the chimpanzees so that the chimpanzees do their natural thing without feeling like, who's that person, what do they want? So I want people to be themselves and not, initially when you get there, they want to show you a PowerPoint. Like, we have a no PowerPoint rule. You will not be showing me a PowerPoint. I don't want to see a PowerPoint. I just want to see what you do and spend time with you and meet the people that you work with. So I think it's just as the things normalize and people become themselves. It isn't like you want to then catch them off guard, saying something because they forgot that you were here and now they said that horribly embarrassing thing. It's not like that.
Yeah. It's
more just that they just become themselves and you become part of the furniture.
So you're like the nerd whisperer.
Precisely. Yes, I like that.
Do you end up? I'm assuming you must end up with a peculiar library of papers and copies and books after each book. Do you have?
Oh God, you should see my video collection.
Oh, the video collection's even weirder.
I've got a collection of. I don't even know if I should even.
Oh yeah, bring it on.
Okay, well.
We're all adults here.
All right.
And if there are kids, just don't repeat it.
I have kind of a shelf in my library, in my office, which is kind of the Mary Roach Museum. I have a number of artifacts and things, but there's a video of, you remember the guy who did the erectile dysfunction surgery? Okay, the way that works is the problem with erectile dysfunction is the blood is leaving the penis before you want it to. And so what they do is they take out some of the veins, so the drainage doesn't happen as readily, and that makes the erection last longer. Well, the surgeon, he wanted to know, which veins are the most important, which one? So he did some cadaver research. And I'm here to tell you that a dead man can have an erection. I have the footage. You asked for it.
Is this something that your kids may stumble upon at some point and scar them for?
My stepdaughters haven't even read my book, so they're not. This is not something they probably want to.
Is there a rule at the house, like mom doesn't discuss her work at the table?
Well, I remember when I started working on Bonk, because my kids were when I wrote Stiff, they were like Mary's working on a book and it's disgusting. And then Bonk came around and Lily, my older stepdaughter, she said, oh, sex, okay, this one I'm going to read. And then she found out about the Dr. Deng section with her dad, and her response was, it was one word, it was, ew. So she didn't read that one either.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to read that about my parents.
Yeah, I know. It was very discreet. Two paragraphs maximum.
I have a friend who walked in on her parents having sex when she was 19.
Ooh.
She said it was far worse than if she was a child.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we should take some questions from the audience.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's open up the conversation. Yeah, over there.
So I noticed that in at least two of your books, there's a weird factoid about dolphin relations. And have you thought about doing something about the sea, about sea research? Because
yeah, sea research is a great. When I worked on Packing for Mars, sometimes people would say to me, you know, the ocean is as unexplored, and there's the weirder stuff. I mean, it is there's all the alien creatures that you wanted to be in space. They're all down there, and the whole it's just the access is a little tough. But you know, because of course I want to be on the scene, and you know, like, can I come down in your diving bell to the depths of the Marianas Trench? Well, there's only 2 seats, and but I think it's a great idea. I would. So yeah, I have kind of mulled that over. Yeah.
Do you ever get people writing to you and saying, if you think that's weird, you should come check out my research?
No, and I want them to. So, well, I wish that I got more. I tend to get people saying, there's a few things. People say you should write about sleep, about drugs, and these are fascinating topics, but they're things that are going on inside a head, and it's very hard. It's kind of like, you know, talking about somebody's drug experience or somebody's dreams. You know, you're just instantly bored. So. That's a challenge. But I got one person who said, you should write a book about the Antichrist. It's like, that's going to be a research challenge. Yeah. Where are they doing that work?
Maybe they should write the book about the
exactly.
Antichrist, clearly. Anybody else? Yes?
I heard you say online a phrase, Houston, we have a fungus.
Yes, that's a chapter from... Oh, a fungus. Oh, God, I imagine so. That was from the chapter. It was a chapter about restricted hygiene studies. There was a period of time where we were getting ready to send people to the moon, and there was a question, you know, is it just too disgusting to have somebody in a pressure suit for 2 weeks with no shower, no toilet? Is it too vile? What happens to your skin? And they were measuring, like, how far, it was like this diaspora of E. coli, like, or diaspora. Whatever it is, you know, the E. coli would like make its way to the eyebrow, and I mean, it was so probably fungus was in there, but I just like the word fungus better than the word bacteria, so that's why it was Houston, we have a fungus.
And another question. Come on, this is your chance to have a conversation with Mary
They can ask
Roach.
you questions too, right?
I suppose you could ask me a question. Yes.
What did you do for Halloween?
What did I do for Halloween? I did not dress up this Halloween. In case something came up, I brought home a full set of leather and Kevlar Batman armor. Just so I was ready. It's down in the garage, but it was a quiet Halloween. I've got a little bit of a sore throat, so we took it easy. We closed all our curtains and locked the dogs in the back of the house.
I know you didn't ask me, but I'm going to tell you what I was told. Because I'm up here and I have the microphone. So I was going to be doing a talk on Monday, which I didn't end up doing. But I was going to wear a brown shirt and a brown skirt, which I have, and they're dressy, and it would have been nice. But I was going to go as an escapee, which is NASA's term for when a little piece of turd floats up out of the toilet. So I thought that for the book talk that I would dress up, yeah. Okay, so next question.
So, yeah.
How much time do you spend between books? Like, how much time do you take off
I try to not take any off because I'm just sort of crippled with anxiety that I won't find another topic. Sometimes it's as much as a year in between when I finish one, or more than a year. So ideas, send me ideas, people. Send me book ideas. MaryRoach.net.
Way in the back there in the white. Yeah, the Alcatraz escape.
Did they take the accordion with them?
It would seem that they took the accordion with them because it was known that they had it in the cell, and it was not one of the things that they recovered.
I missed this episode.
Yes.
So what was your favorite interview or your most memorable interview for Packing Mars?
My most memorable interview had to be, it was Alexander Levakin, who's a cosmonaut, and a part of why it was, I was interviewing him about the difficulties of being stuck with another person for 6 months in a small space. And he was and also we ended up talking about sex and death and everything, and the cosmonauts, as compared to the astronauts, are so kind of forthcoming and right out there. It had also, I guess, a little to do with the fact that it was 11 in the morning and we were drinking whiskey. But I remember, I was saying, like, depression is a serious problem when you're frustrated and you turn that, you repress anger and hostility and turn it in when you get depression. And I asked this guy, Alexander Levakin, were you depressed? I mean, was this a really depressing thing for you, being on Mirror so long? And he said, Mary, there were times when I wanted to hang myself, but it's zero gravity. And you can't. They were just great.
It's why there's no bungee cords in the space station, right? So wait, you said that there's cosmonauts more forthcoming than astronauts. So is Russia and the U.S. controlling for different things when they train their space travelers?
You mean psychologically?
Yeah.
I think that both the United States and Russia don't have a terribly rigorous psychological screening program.
Really?
Hence, you have things like the woman with the diaper and the mace.
Right.
But no, I don't know of any like specific differences in how they choose. The Japanese have an interesting approach to astronaut selection. But what happens when you have an international crew, they all train together and they all kind of, like the Japanese flight surgeon said, because I said, the Japanese, I would think it's difficult because they're more deferential and they tend to keep things in more, and the Americans are kind of like out with their emotions. And he said, yes, but the thing is, after 6 months of training with the astronauts in Houston, they become American. So they just, they find a mean.
But when you say that the cosmonauts are more forthcoming than American astronauts, I mean, I always think, I've met a couple of astronauts. They're some of the most unflappable people I've ever come across.
Yeah.
Are cosmonauts the same but different? Are they?
Well, it depends on if it's a retired astronaut or a current. If you're a current astronaut, you are the PR face of NASA, and you have to be really cautious. Absolutely watch what you say. You're not going to get drunk and hang out with a journalist if you're smart. It's like, there goes your next mission. But retired astronauts can be very forthcoming, very candid. But they tend to not want to, like, they're not going to talk about sex, because then they become known as the astronaut who will dish dirt on sex, and every media person will call them for the rest of their lives. So they don't want to become known as someone who kind of spilled the beans on stuff.
So am I correct that no one has still yet admitted to having sex in space?
As far as I know.
Do you have a suspicion?
There's two couples that there's a couple that got married secretly before flying on the shuttle. Okay, newlyweds flying on the shuttle. I hope to God they did it. I mean, I was talking with my agent about this, and he said, "Come on, don't you think?" And I said, "Well, Jay, you got to figure. Word will get out. Someone will tell. You will not fly again. I mean, these people are so career-oriented. They've put so much of their lives into getting into space. It's so important to them." And Jay takes this all in, and he goes, "Might be worth it, no?" So I would hope that couple, you got the airlock, there's places. It's not a lot of privacy on the shuttle, but so you look the other way, come on. anyway, and there's a couple, there's Polyakov and Kondakova, a Russian couple that they say no, but I don't know.
All right. Yes.
Is there anyone...
Go ahead.
Is there anyone that you've met or interviewed that you thought to yourself, I want to write a book in that subject so that I have a chance to talk to them and people like them more? Or is it just...
Well, when I was working on Stiff, like the germ of Spook came from one of the chapters in Stiff. So frequently there'll be a topic that I want to explore more, and it's too much of a tangent for the book that I'm in, and then it gets kind of explode out. But not a person per se. Although I have to say, the idea for Bonk, and this was a book that in 1 second I knew that is my next book. I was reading a Film Quarterly piece. I don't know why I don't subscribe to Film Quarterly, but it was talking about the colposcopic films of Masters and Johnson. I thought, what does that mean? It turns out they made a penis camera. It was an acrylic phallus with a light source and a camera because they're trying to document female sexual response on some of that's happening inside. And they're scientists, and they're like, how will we study this? I know, penis camera. And, and I read that. I thought, sex research, next book. And like the next week, I told my editor and my agent, they're like, next book. So Masters, so I guess Masters and Johnson, although I didn't get to, sadly, Virginia Johnson would have nothing to do with me.
Well, it's very interesting because you write repeatedly in Bonk that it's very hard to find research, or that the researchers are ostracized for their subject matter, and yet every bit of research you write about in the book is absolutely riveting, fascinating, and alters your
because
worldview.
I went through, I sat down in the basement of UCSF with the entire wall of Journal of Sex Research going, boring, 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 boring. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a massive filtration system. I'm just taking it all in, and 90% of it, it's not boring, it's important, but to me, and to my reader, it's not that scintillating. So I'm looking for the nuggets.
Now, your turn. You had a question.
What's the globe doing?
I don't know. Yes, I'm stymied. I don't know.
It's making us smarter. There we go.
And it spins.
Yes, in orange.
Yeah, so when you're starting new research for a new book, what is the cold call like to a new interview subject?
Well, it's a cold email, and that's made all the difference. I don't know how anybody functioned before email where you actually had to interrupt a researcher at work and say, my name is Mary Roach, and you don't know me, and I write these kind of weird books. I want to write about dead bodies, but it'll be a funny book about dead bodies. And I mean, that is, you can see the receiver going down into the cradle. So email enables you to spell it all out, to say, can I send you a book? Here's my bio. I'm not a freak, or not that much of a freak. So, and that has gotten easier over time.
That's why I was just going to ask that, because of your notoriety.
Now people are like, oh yeah, I read Stiff, I love Stiff, and that helped with the Packing for Mars book, because NASA was uncomfortable with some of the stuff that I wanted to do, but sometimes the researcher would go, Mary, just show up, and we'll deal with NASA when they get here. We did.
Actually, since there's been a couple questions for me, you should talk about our first email meeting, by the way. Because you wrote to me about a story that was in Packing for Mars that hadn't come out yet.
This is how we met. Was I really I had a myth for Adam. We hadn't met, and I sent him a note saying, there's this myth that astronauts talk about, that when you fart in zero gravity, it is enough of a propulsion, and this is a quote, that you will rocket across the middeck.
I totally want to test that.
So I thought, if anybody can get access, and you have been on the Vomit Comet.
I have been on the Vomit. We weren't allowed to call it the Vomit Comet.
No, I wasn't either. It's the Weightless Wonder. Thank you very much.
But I did vomit.
Oh, you did?
I did. I vomit everywhere. I vomited, and I did this thing where I did the 5 takes to camera that we needed with our 5 parabolas. We had 2 more, and once I was done, my body just gave up, so I pulled out the air sickness bag, and I blew into it. And then I looked at it, and I realized, oh, there's nothing holding my vomit in this bag.
That's right.
I better close it.
Yes, that's right.
Did you?
And they describe, someone warned me, He said, now you're going to be in a situation where all these people are floating around you, and several of them will be very, very sick to their stomachs. And if you see someone begin to regurgitate, know that within 15 seconds, that vomit is going to land on you at double weight. Because as you pull out of the parabola, everything's double weight. You go from 0 gravity to 1 gravity to double.
Yeah.
And so you're like, you can't run because you're floating, and you would see this stuff like coming. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but they tend to like push people to the back I think for that very reason.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's little globules of.
We had to do
we
had to do preliminary tests for our insurance company because we were wearing as much weight as the actual astronauts had on them, which was 350 pounds in addition to our own body weight, which was these weight vests of lead, which meant that when we were at double gravity, we weighed 700 pounds.
That's dangerous.
And the insurance company wanted to make sure we could still breathe, so we went down into the shop and piled like 400 pounds on each of our chests, and we're like, oh, good, this is cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they say, I read this somewhere, and I don't have I've never seen it, or I've never seen it corroborated, but a beached whale suffocates because it can without the buoyancy of the water, it can no longer lift expand its lungs.
Yeah.
So I believe that.
I realize that we have missed an opportunity. We have an ASL interpreter in the room, and I want to know what the sign is for penis cam. Oh, well.
That's really, that's funny because I wanted to look over and see what vomit was.
Excellent. Other questions? Way in the back there?
When you're on the scene and doing something active, what are the different ways you figured out to record information? Do you find it affects the way people want to tell you things, or you're standing there taking notes all the time?
I have a tape recorder. It's a little digital guy, and you can almost, it's so small that people kind of don't notice that it's there very much. It's not, I'm not hiding it, but I don't have kind of a microphone in anyone's face. And I'm constantly hitting pause, sort of gauging, will I ever use this material? And this is going to be a real bitch to transcribe when I get home if I don't shut this thing down at some point. So I'm transcribing the bits that seem, either it's complicated and I want to get it right, because I don't have a science degree, or the way people are phrasing it, the way they talk is so wonderful that I don't want to miss any of how they talk. So that I'm grabbing by tape recorder, but at the same time I'm writing notes about what's going on, about what people are wearing, etc. So I've always got both in my hand, and they almost never leave my hand. I get really uncomfortable when I have to do something where you must put down your tape recorder and your notepad. I'm like, I'm not gonna get stuff because I have a terrible memory.
Have you ever found yourself in a really humiliating situation, having sex in front of a researcher in London aside?
That'll do it. Yeah.
Like where you find yourself in a situation where you think, maybe I didn't think this one all the way through?
There was a Jerry Nahum in Spook, the guy who had come up with kind of a modern day soul weighing, kind of a quantum mechanics thing. He was one of those people. He's either incredibly brilliant or insane. And I don't have the background to really know, but anyway, he would talk to me about these things that, like words like microtubules, and I can't. They're just way beyond me. And he had this habit of going, "Okay, we need to stop here, and you need to tell me what I've been saying, so I know that you understand." I'm like, "Don't do this to me, please don't. I don't understand, but I'll go home and I'll replay the tape and I'll transcribe it and I'll struggle to figure it out and I'll call you back. But I can't tell you because I have no idea what you've been talking about."
Yeah.
And he had his office, the only decor were certificates, degrees. I mean, it was wall to wall, and maybe he mail ordered these.
All internet schools.
It's all yeah. So that's done. I have a certain sort of insecurity because I don't have a degree in science. So I'm always kind of asking, I'm asking pretty dumb questions, and scientists are so kind and so good at explaining because they're not really. I make them be my tutor in a way. Okay, explain this to me. So I'm not really. It's not an interview. It's like sort of a private classroom.
How lucky.
Yeah, no. People are incredibly generous.
Yes, back there.
The British magazine New Scientist this week has a long article, which they don't normally have, on the really sad state of science in this country right now.
And I'm really curious that given that your books are, quote, funny, that in some way, how do you feel about how you're contributing to the public's view of science in this country?
The public's view, like I'm saying it's something that they should laugh at, that they shouldn't take it seriously?
Yeah, that maybe, do you think that maybe you're helping to contribute to better feelings about science and what researchers are producing?
Oh, I hope so.
A lot of nods in the audience to that question.
Yeah, what I'm hoping is that I'm kind of an ambassador to, between the world of science, people who publish papers and do science, and people who don't think that they like science. I want to kind of like through the back door get science into people's lives, and they'll go, oh, this is actually interesting. I thought science was boring. So and humor is something that I use. Also, I use humor because it makes it more fun for me. But any way to pull people in and to get, like the best emails I get are from kids in high school going, I had to read your book this summer, and I thought I was going to hate it, but it was really cool. And that, to me, is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk about what you're working on next?
No.
No, we haven't taken one from over this side of the audience. Somebody had their hand up. Yes.
Hi. I was curious. You said that it's gotten your access to people has gotten easier as you've done more books. I'm curious though about how, as a female journalist, if there have ever been any times when you felt like that posed a problem in getting access or
Getting people to take me seriously because I'm a woman. I would think not so much that I'm a. Actually, let me just say, I've never been aware of that, but it could be the kind of thing that's happening without me knowing it. I assume when someone turns me down, it's because they're too busy. They're worried about what I might say. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why people say no to you, and that one may be happening. I just don't know. I've never had anybody say, "No way, you're a woman."
Have you ever had anyone turn you down because they don't like what you've written?
Not that they've ever said it. They've never actually said that. But I imagine, I fully anticipate that. I expect somebody to say, I did have someone when I wrote Stiff say, I saw a Salon column of yours, and no, we don't want to talk to you. And then I called another guy, and he said, yeah, I saw that column, and you're welcome to come here. So some people, you just, cross them off the list and move on. But no, that hasn't, that I've been aware of, been an issue. But again, how I wouldn't necessarily know. Yeah.
Over there.
I wanted to be an astronaut when I was younger, so I was really excited to read your book, and I read it, and I wish I had it when I was in high school. I was like, oh, thank God I did not choose to follow that path.
It's a bit of an eye-opener, yeah.
Yeah, was the research what you found, was that surprising to you? Did you expect to find?
For me, even though you find out how physically and psychologically tough it is, for me it's kind of like there's some people who love to go backpacking, and other people say it's uncomfortable. You're sleeping on a hard ground. The food is disgusting. You don't get any sleep. You don't have a shower. It's awful. Why would anyone do that? And then there's people who are like, yeah, but the place that you get to and the view that you have is so unreal that you don't even care about that stuff. So I think my take on space is that for the people that want to do it, all that stuff doesn't matter because it's so amazing to be up there and to be an astronaut. And it would be interesting to know how many astronauts, if they had the chance to do it over, would be like, nah, I wouldn't do it again. I tend to think it's a pretty small number, those who've gone to space, but yeah, it's not for everybody.
Have you ever gotten a letter from a kid saying that one of your books altered their career trajectory?
I've launched a lot of people into forensics, and I don't know if they are grateful now at this point, years later. I think I'm responsible for the forensics programs in colleges being, well, CSI too. CSI has definitely contributed, not all me, but I do get people saying, I now I want to be a doctor, and that's incredible to me that somebody, because of my book, would decide to become a doctor.
Yeah.
was
That's
very
far
cool.
out.
I mean, you must have launched so many. I mean, next to the Apollo program, MythBusters to me has launched more careers in science. I think it's so cool. Really.
We have gotten several over the years emails from people who are now PhDs that they said they were inspired by our, and I think that they're too young. we were in London and we were at this very fancy restaurant and the head chef came up to me and he said, "I love your program. I've been watching it since I was little." And I thought, go to hell. Another question? Yes.
With all your travels, do you ever run into like official entanglements?
Official entanglements. Yeah, you mean like? Yeah, I had in Russia. Whoever did my visa, it was off by one day. So I'm trying to leave and come home, and the guy says, "Your visa is expired. Big problem." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So I'm leaving. Why is this? What he goes? $5. So I look in my wallet and I go, I'm sorry, I only have 20s. He goes, okay, 20.
Equal opportunity bribery.
Yeah.
Way in the back there. Well, I am writing at the same time I'm researching. I mean, there's a few months of just doing research, but as soon as I get a chapter that I know I know it's going into the book, I write it as soon as I can. Otherwise, I start to get this, I haven't written a word in 6 months, and I don't know if I can do it anymore. And so I dive in, and I'm writing chapters at the same time I'm interviewing another one. And as for when you kind of have enough, it's really intuitive. At a certain, I think, like 6 months out, you kind of go, oh, I know where this book is going, and I know what's going to be in it. And you may pull something out here and stick something else in, but at that point, it's kind of gelled, and you just fill in the holes. That actually brings up an interesting point. I would assume that some people have made their way here because they're both fans, but they also might be working on a book. Is anyone working on a book out here that's interested in talking about it, like they've come to hear an author talk? You just said something that really interested me, which is, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I have to say, in my travels, I haven't met someone at the top of their field or in any field who's doing really well at it, who doesn't feel like that halfway through any project. Like, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah. No, I when I was working on Packing for Mars, there was a point at which, there was a cadaver crash down study, and NASA had waffled for a long time, and finally the PR woman said, a combination of things, you cannot do this. It's no one thing, it's no one person, you can't do this. The same week, the Japanese Space Agency said, I know we said you could come here, but now you can't. So both of those things happened, and something else fell through. And at that's the point where I just sort of, you can ask Ed, just sort of broke down and went, that's it, I quit, freaking quit, I quit, I can't do it, I can't stand it, And then, we just figured, I called the Japanese, I sent an email to the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency woman, and I said, I have a non-refundable ticket and I'm coming. So, hopefully I can meet with whoever is saying no, and we'll work out a way that you feel comfortable, because I'm coming, baby.
Wow.
I got a ticket. What can you do? So it all came together okay. But you did reach a point where, you think, wouldn't it be fun to just quit? It'd be so much easier.
There was right there.
So when I think about space agencies, the Japanese don't immediately come to mind. And I'm just curious as to what your experience was and how their space program compared to the American or the
Russian space program. Right, how the Japanese Space Agency compares to other ones. Well, the Japanese astronauts, they train at Houston and at Star City, depending on who's, whether it was the shuttle or Soyuz. So their training is essentially the same as the American astronauts' training. And it's interesting, you go to the Japanese Space Agency, and you can tell they've modeled it on NASA. They have that same horrible not even a color beige on the walls. Like they special ordered it from Houston or something. And they've got the same kind of low sort of shoebox architecture. It really is very modeled on NASA, except that it's JAXA. But the way that they do things is the way that they choose astronauts is completely different. They were having them do an origami test.
Wait,
1,000
really?
cranes. Yes, it was each person had to fold 100 origami cranes in a certain amount of time, and they had to be strung on a string and sent to psychologists who would look at the first crane versus the last crane. And it was a test of attention to detail over time and focus. And at first you're like, what? And then you think, wow, that kind of makes a great deal of sense.
No, I read about that and it made incredible amounts of sense. In
Yeah.
fact, it seemed to me like it would reveal portions of my personality I would not want anyone to know about.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. So, sorry, someone just raised their hand there? Yes.
What's the most interesting discussion about science you've ever had with your children, both of you?
Okay, when I worked on Bonk, I remember my stepdaughter Lily saying, we were talking about sex, which is interesting because kids now, they talk about sex. I mean, she was like 13, 12 probably then. And she's like, okay, so oral sex is when they talk on the phone, right? That's the most, I mean, that's not really science, is it? But that came to mind. Your turn.
When my kids have to do science experiments, I ride them really hard because I expect they're going to go into class, and if they get it right, the other kids are going to go, well, it's Dad's freaking MythBuster, come on. So I don't give them anything to go on. If anything, I'm worse than your average parent because I want them not to go in with that advantage.
Yeah.
I want them to think it through. However, my son had to build a trebuchet for school a couple years ago. And it's just one of those things that I haven't gotten around to building. I know it seems kind of crazy, but I've also never made a potato cannon. There's a long list. And so because I'd never built a trebuchet, I distinctly didn't look it up. I knew its structure.
Wait, for the people in the audience that don't know, and that includes me, what is it? What?
A trebuchet is a type of medieval siege engine. It's similar to a catapult, but it uses a counterweight and it uses a sling advantage to get much more distance than your average catapult. The release mechanism is a standard, what I now know is a standard sling release mechanism, but I had never studied it, and I distinctly didn't look it up because I wanted my son to figure it out.
Yeah.
So we went into my shop, and we figured it out together, and almost at the same time. My son who was doing this they're both very natural builders, which pleases me greatly.
Yeah, right.
But there was this point at which we tried several different angles on the release, and we realized what the actual angle was, and we both were looking at each other like this. We got it! It was perfectly equivalent.
That's great.
Yeah. Last question, yes.
So you said how you get distracted and the books are just filled with these anecdotes and tangents and stuff. Do you have to reel yourself back in, or do you just let yourself see how far it goes?
I tend to let my editor do the reeling in, and God love her, she doesn't do as much as I thought she would. So, and I have had people come up to me and say, you have ADHD, don't you? Because I am just very distracted, and I embrace, it's sort of indulgent in a way. I do put it in a footnote so it doesn't completely, interrupt the flow. But I tend to just let it go, because it sometimes takes you to the most fun places. But I may go back and pull, if it's completely absurd, I will sometimes have the good sense to take it out. And other times my editor will do that for me. Just cross it out and go, no.
Now I saw one more hand raised over there in the corner. I didn't want.
You have gone all over the world, and a lot of what you've studied has been kind of quirky science. Some of it pretty mainstream in a quirky element, and some of it pretty quirky in general. Is the U.S. the leader in quirk, or is there another?
Is the U.S. the leader in quirk? I think that every country has a quirk element, thankfully. And sometimes the quirk comes because it's a sort of a cross-cultural experience for me, and they do things a little differently, and that makes it quirky for me, but for them and for their peers, it's normal. So I don't know. The Brits are pretty good at quirk. The Japanese are very good at quirk. Yeah, so I think it's pretty. There's a global community of quirk out there, thankfully.
And that would be a great moniker for what you're covering, the global community of quirk.
Yes.
Let's have a big round of applause for Mary Roach.
Adam Savage. Yay!
So, Mary Roach, Adam Savage, thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us this evening.
So much fun.